If there's one thing you take away from this episode, it's this. Remember the mangoes. It's been several years now, but my wife and I were down in southern Florida visiting my daughter at college, and we had the opportunity to stay at a place called Jubilee Organics. Now, to know something about my wife, she is all things natural and organic, and this is a beautiful property. And so when we were there, we were able to get a tour of this property. And we're going and we're looking at the way that they're farming techniques. It's fascinating. And we stop at this tiny little mango tree. And as we stop at the mango tree, the guide says to us, he says, "Now here's our mango tree." And I looked at it and it had 2 mangoes on it, okay? This is not a very impressive mango tree. And he begins to say something that really caused me to stop and think. He said, "Last week, this tree was covered in mangoes, so we went ahead and trimmed it back." And he said, "The reason we trimmed it back is because the tree has the ability to produce more fruit than it can sustain." And he says, by limiting the fruit, we're letting the roots develop, because if we don't trim the tree, it will kill itself. And I sat there and I just kind of froze for a moment. I was like, I got to write this down. I grabbed my phone and I make a note, and the note says, "Remember the mangoes." And I knew this is going to be a leadership talk or a sermon or who knows, a podcast someday. And let me tell you something. I learned a lesson that day from this mango tree, and it's a biblical lesson. Matter of fact, the Bible says, Proverbs chapter 29, verse 18 says, "Where there's no revelation, people cast off restraint. But blessed is the one who heeds wisdom's instructions." Now you're thinking, what does that got to do with mangoes? Hang with me. Where there's no revelation, people cast off restraint. Some versions say where there's no vision, the people perish. If you show me a person who doesn't know why they exist, I'll show you someone who can't find their way. Matter of fact, there's a saying that says when people lose their why, they lose their way. And so this verse says where there's no revelation, there's no restraint. Another way of saying this is where there's no vision, there's no restraint. But where there is vision, there's going to be restraint. Now, I keep using this word restraint. Maybe that sounds like a negative word, but it's not. Let me give you a definition for restraint. Restraint is a measure or condition that keeps someone or something under control or within limits. So a person living with vision is going to be a person living with restraint. Couple examples. When my wife and I were dating, we had no restraint in our finances. Okay. I mean, we had no money, so it didn't seem like we really needed much restraint. If we wanted to go out on a date night, we went somewhere because it was really cheap. We had part-time jobs, made just enough money. When we got married, that lack of vision carried over into our marriage. And guess what? That lack of vision caused a lack of restraint. We were making more money than we had ever made, which was not a lot of money, but for us, it was the most we'd ever seen. And I was spending money at a rate that was outpacing our earning. And we started overdrawing our account, and we started running up credit cards, and I bought a truck that I couldn't afford. Then we realized we couldn't afford it, and we traded the truck in and got negative equity on another vehicle, and then we had a house, throw kids in the mix. And long story short, we wound up in horrible consumer debt because there was no restraint. Well, why was there no restraint? Because there was no vision. Where there's no vision, the people perish. They cast off restraint. Hey everyone, real quick. In some of the initial episodes, you may hear me refer to the podcast as the Jeff Capusta Podcast or the Jeff Capusta Leadership Podcast. After recording the first few episodes, we realized it made more sense to keep consistent with the theme of Fully Alive and the book that I recently released called Fully Alive, which you can get in the description or the show notes. I just want to make sure you knew that you're not imagining things. It was us making a change. Well, having said that, let's get back to the episode. In the early days of the church that I pastor, we had a financial consultant come in, and he sat down with my wife and I, and he said, "I want to look at your finances. I want to help you guys." And I didn't want him to look at our finances because I knew it was a mess. And he started looking and he started asking questions. Why are you doing this? And why are you spending on this? And I'm like, well, because we have to, and everybody has. And long story short, it was humiliating for him to go through all of our finances. We felt exposed, but what he did is he helped us gain a vision for what could be. He said, do you know what? If you take what I'm teaching you and you apply these principles, you could be debt-free in 24 months. And I remember thinking, like, first off, my first thought was 24 months. That's forever. But how many you know 24 months is going to be here, like it or not? You can either be where you want to be or you can be right where you are today. And so we took those principles and we started working them. And that meant we stopped spending money on things we didn't need to spend money on. And we cut up some of our credit cards because we're not going back there. And we started selling off things we didn't need. Can I tell you something? It wasn't 24 months that we got out of debt. It was 18 months because with that vision, we found restraint. A while back, I made a decision that personally, I needed to get healthy. I made the decision because my wife posted a video on Instagram where I didn't have my shirt on, and it was me from the back, and she wasn't trying to humiliate me. We were actually out with our kids on vacation at a lake, and this ice cream boat pulled up. Did you know they have ice cream boats? Like ice cream trucks, music's playing, and I was like, we got to get ice cream. And so I go over there, and my wife is just, she's capturing this moment, but what she also captured were my love handles just spilling over the top of my bathing suit. I was like, babe, what are you doing? Take it down. This is embarrassing. I had seen a side of me I'd never seen before. Come on, guys, you know this. When someone's taking a picture of you without a shirt on, you suck it in. Guess what you can't suck in? That back fat. And so I saw that and I was like, something's got to change. And so we said we're gonna have a vision to be healthy. So we restrained the carbs that we ate. That vision brought restraint. You know, my wife and I, this year is 27 years of marriage. We have 3 amazing kids, and we want to have a great marriage. And so we want a great marriage for the rest of our life. So we apply some principles and some restraint in the early days of our relationship. So for instance, you know, we want to make sure that we're still dating each other when our kids are out of the house. So when our kids were in the house, we made date nights a priority. And so we said there's some things we're going to do and things we won't do. Where there's vision, there's restraint. You know, one of the things for we want our kids to value family time. And so for us, as often as possible, we sit around the table as a family. We put restraints in some of the things that our kids do, extracurricular activities. Why? Because we have a vision for what we want our family to be. Just like that farmer had a vision for the mango tree. The vision for the mango tree is to produce fruit for a long time. Therefore, they're willing to restrain the growth for a short season until the roots are ready. Because if the root doesn't precede the fruit, the growth will not be sustainable. When you get a vision, you'll apply restraint because vision brings restraint. On next episode, I'm going to share with you about how I got this wrong. And because of that, I was forced to sit on the sidelines, and there was literally nothing I could say about it.